Hello, welcome back. It is a pleasure to introduce Manuel Borja Villel. Manuel is one of the most influential museum thinkers and cultural leaders in Europe. As former director of the Fundació Antoni Tapies, MACBA in Barcelona, and the Museo Reina Sofía in Madrid for 15 years, he has consistently challenged museums to rethink their role in society, moving beyond collections and buildings toward questions of democracy, participation, memory, and social responsibility. Throughout his career, he has encouraged museums to become spaces of dialogue, critical reflection, and shared knowledge, opening important conversations about inclusion, decolonization, institutional change, and the relationship between museums and their communities. His work has influenced museums' practice far beyond the field of contemporary art and has helped shape ongoing debates about the role of museum in the 21st century. Please join me, and we give him a welcome to the EMYA2026. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Adriana. It's a pleasure to be here with so many colleagues and friends whose friendship I share, whose work I admire. So it's an honor, a pleasure to be here. My presentation will have 5 parts, and I hope you enjoy it. I'll try to read slowly so you can understand my Spanish accent. By the way, the exhibition, the text is called Caring for Life, but also it has a subtitle which is After the Museum. Means it's about leaving the museum, actually. So, number 1, after paying the admission ticket, 2 activists from the environmental group Futuro Vegetal enter the Prado Museum and walk through the galleries of the permanent collection. Upon reaching the rooms devoted to the painter Francisco de Goya, they decided to stick their hands to the frames of La Maja Vestida and La Maja Desnuda, 2 of his most emblematic works. On the wall, they scroll a figure, 1,5 degrees Celsius. The gesture points to the rise in global temperature and its planetary consequences. The activists are later arrested and charged with crimes against cultural heritage and public disorder. Although their sentences could have ranged from 6 months to 3 years in prison, at the end they receive only a fine as the damage caused is minimal. This event took place on November 5, 2022, and I still remember the irritation I provoked in a well-known Spanish cultural journalist, who is not here, when, alarmed by the action of these agitators, she asked me at a press conference what could be done to prevent those barbarians from continuing their misdeeds. Let's all try to bring down that 1.5 degrees together, I recall replying. The problem will be solved and we will live in a better world. She did not appreciate the response. In her view, I confuse art with politics, the same error she attributed to the activists. They have no reason to protest in a museum and put its paintings at risk, she said, visibly annoyed. A country's cultural legacy plays a decisive role in shaping its identity. In the case of the nation-state, it is constructed with the aim of distinguishing itself from the other, creating a tension between inside and outside. Whoever remains outside is by definition the other, someone radically different. This different is necessary for self-definition, yet always is perceived as a potential threat. When the balance between these 2 impulses breaks down, heritage becomes an element of dispute. Some attack it knowing that at any sign of danger, others will defend it. It is understood that to attack heritage is to attack those who consider it theirs. The scientific utopia of the Enlightenment aspired to a form of total knowledge that would encompass all beings and things. 19th century European empires pursued this ambition through the systematic extraction of animal specimens and cultural objects from distant territories. In 1798, the Napoleonic army entered Egypt accompanied by 167 archaeologists and scientists, tasked with securing material for the future Musée Napoleon in Paris. This heterogeneous accumulation was subject to classification, ordering, and hierarchy. Each object was isolated and reassigned, art with art, nature with nature, politics with politics. Knowledge was divided into sealed disciplines. Once in Europe, museums and academies determined what counted as art, what qualified as science, and what was relegated to superstition. At the center stood the white European subject. Other peoples were displaced to the margins or expelled from history altogether. Who sets these rules? Who names? Who decides that a canvas carries more weight than a tree or a forest? In cultures such as the Maya, Guarani, or Amazigh, such divisions lack meaning. Ecological action and artistic practice do not stand apart. There is no need to choose between a tree and a painting. The sense of obligation to choose is itself a product of Eurocentric modernity. Political or ecological exhibitions are welcome as long as they remain confined to discourse. The moment when a couple of young women, like you see there, glue their hands to a frame, alarms go off. What irritated my stressed journalist was that the protest had taken place in a space considered inappropriate, the museum. 2. That's Fondation Cartier in Paris. General Exhibition is the title of the show with which the Fondation Cartier inaugurated its new art center on October 25, 2025. Nearly 600 works from across the globe were arranged in thematic sections, which were relations between human and non-human, science fiction, spirituality, and the many ways of inhabiting the earth. A significant number of the participating artists were indigenous, Afro-descendants, or from outside Europe. The themes were timely. The selection appeared at first glance well-chosen. Yet the exhibition failed to produce any real effect. The display seemed to design, above all, to facilitate a smooth and agreeable visit. Visitors encountered the violence of the present without disturbance. Art operates here as a form of anesthesia. The exhibition evoked the logic of a fair. Objects were grouped like bazaar commodities, perpetually available for exchange and homogenization under the general spell of the merchandise. Wall labels dutifully invoke extractivism, heteropatriarchy, racism, yet the installation suggested, above all, a regime of collectible goods. It was not insignificant that the building housing the new venue once accommodated Le Grand Magasin du Louvre, a commercial mall. There were no transactions taking place now, that's true, and yet the prevailing sensation was that everything might be bought. The scene recalls the logic articulated in Émile Zola or Bonheur de Dame, whereby the department store capacity to incite and regulate desires serves to remove practices grounded in place and sustained through shared social ties. Alongside the initiatives of Bernard Arnault and François Pinault, Cartier participates in the ongoing substitution of the public by the private that has come to define the cultural landscape of the French capital. These foundations present themselves as custodians of culture and the public interest. In practice, they tend to produce the opposite effect, though. They promote a culture of consumption and luxury, governed through particular and exclusionary frameworks. Exposition General Exhibition claims to amplify silenced voices and to host critical engagement with the present, but it leaves its own conditions untouched. For example, the origin of the foundation's funding remains unexamined. So too do the labor conditions of those who maintain the space, cleaners, guards, many of whom likely come from the same regions represented on the walls. The ambiguity of this inaugural project reveals a familiar logic within the contemporary art system. Debate is staged, but rarely at the level where it might unsettle institutional frameworks. Instead, it tends to reinforce them while concealing their contradictions. There is no sustained effort to rethink what is established, nor to engage in any substantive way with other realities. The relationship between European museums and the aesthetic productions of subjugated peoples remains inseparable from the history of colonialism. Throughout the 19th century, the drive to know went together with the impulse to possess, to acquire. Imperial powers plundered systematically during their military campaigns. The looted objects function both as instruments of finance and as mechanisms of humiliation. Ultimately, the artistic practices of the colonized were subsumed in a generalizing discourse that emptied them of specificity and mobilized them instead as evidence of a presumed lack in relation to the metropolitan order. 3. Heider Svel, there with one of his paintings. Heider Svel's participation in the 34th Sao Paulo Biennial was widely regarded as a success. A Makushi artist, he presented a series of paintings of striking beauty, grounded in the cosmogonies of his community. Critical reception was unanimous, and collectors moved quickly to acquire his work. However, on October 21, 2021, 6 weeks before the biennial closed, Svel took his own life. The reasons were never clarified. Personal factors, no doubt, played a role. Yet the pressures of a market and a social order structured around individualism, competition, and private property cannot be dismissed. These values are at odds with those of the Makushi, whose culture is collective and sustained through shared responsibility. Nothing belongs exclusively to one person. Svel's death prompts a broader question regarding the ownership of heritage. To whom do works of art belong? To those who produce them? To those who interpret them? To the country in which they are held? Or to those who find meaning in them? Cultural institutions, whether private or public, bear an ethical and legal responsibility to safeguard their collections, not because they possess them, but because they are held in common. Their governance and future should not be determined by a limited group of actors, whether institutional administrators or political and religious authorities. The scale of major museums' collections is telling. The British Museum holds more than 8 million objects. The Louvre, over 500,000. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, around 2 million. Such figures verge on the obscene, to me as obscene as Elon Musk owning everything. More importantly, they point to a longer history in which plunder, destruction, and dispossession have been persistent conditions. Within the field of art, these processes have often been reframed as acts of preservation. We keep it and we save it. But the rhetoric of stewardship obscures the structure that underpins it, while continuing to generate economic value. Museums have frequently provided the settings for these dynamics. Over time, their inaction has acquired the force of legitimacy. In recent decades, debates over the restitution of objects acquired illegitimately have multiplied. It is evident that what has been stolen must be returned, of course. However, restitution must be accompanied by a process of remembrance and reparation. Returning artworks, or the promise of doing so, often left unfulfilled, only makes sense if the wounds inflicted are made visible and a comprehensive process of repair is undertaken, one that includes the transformation and healing of the affected groups. It is possible to restore what rightfully belongs to others, but not to bring back the lives that were taken. Specialists and aficionados have marveled at the beauty of objects displayed in imperial museums, though they rarely take an interest in the origins of the path they travel to reach their display cases. This blindness ignores the people who created them and their places of origins, condemning them to have no voice and no place as subjects of history. In her film Undocumented, Unlearning Imperialism Plunder, filmmaker and researcher Ariela Zulay questions why European institutions desire masks, sculpture, textiles, or paintings from Africa, from the Americas, or Oceania, while denying entry visas to the descendants of those who created them. Borders are constitutive features of modern world. They have been so since the 16th century, as Western powers map and partition territories while erecting systems of control. Some borders were external, demarcating states, others internal, regulating the movement of the populations. Crossing them required documentation and full citizenship. Peoples for whom national boundaries held little meaning, such as the Roma in Europe or the Yanomami and Bantu in the Americas and Africa, suffered persecution, wars, or were exterminated. Inequality is most acute at these points of division. Mobility has become increasingly restricted, even as survival depends more than ever on the ability to cross such barriers. A predatory global plutocracy has emerged, concentrating resources and imposing increasingly authoritarian forms of governance, while states appear confined to surveillance and security. Deepening inequality, disorientation, and the erosion of future prospects have fueled the resurgence of xenophobic and totalitarian ideologies that seek to restore a supposedly pure social and racial order. These narratives feed on fears of demographic replacement and advance extreme measures, including detention and mass deportation. Back to heritage. To preserve only what is defined as ours is to ignore the extent to which all forms of heritage are entangled. Histories of migrations and displacement, whether chosen or imposed, shape the material and symbolic fabric of every monument. What is inherited is not a closed system, but a field of relations. The significance of heritage lies less in discrete objects than in the connections they sustain. Engaging with it requires attending to the systems of thought from which it emerges, as well as to past and future generations. Under these conditions, the notion of property tied to a nation becomes untenable. The relations that constitute heritage exceed the limits of the state. 4. A Agua è una macchina do tempo, Water is a Machine of Time, is an extraordinary film by the Afro-Brazilian artist Aline Mota. In it, she recounts her childhood and the sadness she felt when her white neighbor and best friend asked her mother, "Aline, will she get better soon?" The child was referring to the color of Aline's skin. Years later, after her mother's death, Mota begins to delve into her own biography and to translate it into film. On her white father's side, she traces her lineage back to several centuries. On her African maternal side, she can only go as far as her great-grandmother, Francisca. Little is known about her. The archives are obstinate and silent, recording just her death from tuberculosis. What kind of history is this that condemns a woman forever? Mota asked. Faced with the impossibility of an official answer, she decides to reverse the direction of time. If Michael J. Fox, the protagonist of that film from the 80s, Back to the Future, a film she loved, Aline loved as a child, could travel to the past in order to alter the present, why could not she do the same? Western time is linear and progressive, organized in sequential order, a convenient temporality, since what is past is past. We tell ourselves that mistakes may have been made in distant times, but now we stand on the right side of history, ignoring the fact that this burden is inherited. Mota, by contrast, proposes a spiral conception of time, capable of moving backwards and returning us to the future, thereby unsettling dominant regimes of historical memory. Should inherited documents merely confirm narratives that perpetuate oppression, or might heritage be understood as a field capable of activating what never was? The question is how to give form to silenced histories, to recover erased narratives, and to imagine lives forever foreclosed by genocidal violence. Another film by the Vietnamese Trinh My Ha examines in Surname Viet, given name Nam of 1989, how the history of her country has been written. Women occupy a central position in the film as they recount recent history. They unsettle the binary opposition between victors and defeated. They insist on the urgency of making silenced voice audible, not through imposition, but through sheer and active listening, thereby transforming the conditions under which knowledge is produced and transmitted. Culture becomes a space for negotiation and healing. It also entails abandoning the linguistic I, a Eurocentric figure of authority that claims universality and truth for a single form of knowledge. The history of our legacy is shared history, rooted in affection and lived experience. Rethinking heritage from this perspective requires questioning not only of the term itself, but of its etymology. This is precisely with a group of thinkers, cultural practitioners, artists, and activists within the HF Ile-de-France Association has been doing since 2015. At their annual meeting, they advocate for the transformation of the Heritage Days organized by European Union countries into, and this is difficult to translate into English, actually cannot be translated, into what they call matrimoine culturel days, dedicated to the study and dissemination of women's contribution to history. Although matrimoine resists easy translation, what matters here is to recall how in Roman law, patrimonium, of father, of patrimony, heritage in English, and matrimonium, of mother, of marriage, were articulated as complementary regimes. The former, patrimonium, referred to the wealth a man brought into marriage and transmitted from father to son, securing patrilineal descent. By contrast, matrimonium designated the woman's role within the marital bond, reproduction, the body, and care of the children. If patrimony secured wealth and male lineage, matrimony marked the woman's contribution to the union, the production of life. We know that in 16th century, however, this good of the mother gradually shifted into the mother that is a good, a property, and marriage became increasingly subject to forms of consumption and control by the husband. Yet the claim advanced by the HF movement remains pertinent in proposing another conception of historical inheritance, one that privileges not the individual, the isolated object, or the nation-state, but what is shared. Embracing the memories of the entire world is key to understanding a common world, not just a province of the earth. It implies recognizing that the suffering produced by systemic violence concerns all of us, and that this all can no longer be restricted to the human. The actions of the Earth community must be aligned with geological, climate, vegetal, animal, and microbial temporalities. We are summoned by all the forms of the living, from the whole world to the whole planet. The center is not the Earth, not the human species. Within this framework, the subject-object dialectic loses its validity, as does a historiography based exclusively on documents and artifacts. Things are not inert. They are animated presences. Can we still speak of art in the sense that has prevailed since the 18th century? I would argue not. What then constitutes our legacy? Monuments, historical objects, and archives will persist, no doubt, but they will no longer occupy a privileged position. There is no single locus of meaning, only an archipelago of heterogeneous relationship. This implies a radical reconfiguration of how we imagine, preserve, and transmit past and future. Within the notion of matrimony, culture is not property, but offering. One does not choose between a painting and a tree. Caring for one entails caring for the other. Time is up. Okay, I'll try to be very, very short now. You can bear 3 minutes with me? Yeah? Okay. Back in 1970, Marcel Brotards argued that culture is a battle that always takes place on enemy's ground. The far right understands this well. Its priority is not truth, but controlling the discussion's frame. That's why it's critical to consider the space from which statements, discourse, exhibitions emerge, and to challenge our own reference points. Otherwise, we risk saying one thing and doing another, like when museums claim to promote a culture of care and listening while clinging to competitive and individualistic values. Western contemporary art centers often invoke terms like decolonization, restitution, redistribution, performativity, or the right to refusal. Their exhibitions are built around such concepts. Yet, regardless of curators' good intentions, these same institutions struggle to decolonize their structures and adopt truly alternative models of governance. Xenophobia, racism, and transphobia are clearly not tolerated. Boards, in general, follow strict ethical codes. But even so, decision-making processes often resemble those from a century ago. A telling sign is that European museums generally engage more smoothly with communities from a given object's country of origin, as far as they stay there, in Senegal, in Cameroon, etc., than with migrants' populations in their own neighborhoods, who are often brought in for outreach programs that on occasion led to frustrating experiences. For most museums, inclusion and accessibility represent their most significant challenges. The intentions are noble. It is often believed that simply removing barriers and allowing people to learn about art history or human achievement is enough for the society that these institutions serve to improve. However, if these proposals are not questioned from other epistemologies, the knowledge acquired merely increases the weight of the past or of dominant ideas on our shoulders, reinforcing the status quo and preventing any possibility of rupture. Western institutions assume that for a peripheral artist or community, the ultimate goal is to arrive, to be included. No alternative paths are considered. From this, it is inferred that those excluded from the dominant narrative could be appreciated with a bit of effort, either their own, so they should do something to be recognized, or that of the institutions that welcome them. Perhaps, so the thinking goes, these authors simply lack the necessary opportunities, or perhaps the experts of the time past failed to grasp the value and beauty of artistic expressions that went beyond the norm. But such recognition only happens through absorption into or identification with the accepted culture. This was made perfectly clear at the 60th Venice Biennial, the one of 2 years ago, a colonial exhibition framework in which many works were accompanied by the phrase, and you probably will remember, "This is the first time this artist is exhibiting at the biennial." Like, who cares? So it is not about entering the system. It's not about coming to the museum. It's about living it. The goal is not simple to arrive at the museum, but to push for an exodus, an escape from self-imposed limits. Decolonization is not just about restitution. It means to amend and to heal. Yet healing cannot come from those who cause the harm. The peoples who experience dispossession must decide what to do and how. Reforming the museum is not enough. It is essential. From these ruins, we construct new narratives, frameworks, and organizational forms. Almost finished. Years ago, the Italian critic Marco Barabale proposed that we should inhabit the museum rather than just visit it. The verb inhabit comes from the Latin habitare, meaning to repeatedly have, to make something one's own, an object or a territory. One might say that inhabiting is a way of being and existing in the world. To inhabit a museum means that society makes it its own. It becomes a space of institutional experimentation where our deepest hopes and darkest fears can be negotiated. And in doing so, it becomes a space where new universes might be imagined. An inhabit museum is not organized by themes or style. It is articulated through relationships. Instead of outlining and representing milestones of national history, the inhabited museum moves along borderlands because it is there, as Chicana poet Gloria Anzaldúa wrote, that the reconstruction of collective identities of the diaspora or those situated beyond coloniality takes place. For this to happen, it is essential to scale down and weave a fabric of micronarratives in order to reveal that the contested territory, by virtue of being shared, holds more stories than those within the national narrative. These stories are nourished by what each denies in the other, and in that mutual denial emerges the space in which the murmurs of the narrative of the expelled population take shape, suppressed narratives that exist in tension with the dominant ones. In the introduction to Stefano Harney and Fred Motten's famous book, The Undercommons, Jack Halberstam references another famous, wonderful book, Maurice Sendak's famous story, Where the Wild Things Are. For Halberstam, the protagonist is immersed in a journey to a world that is no longer the one he left, but also is not the one he originally intended to return to. For Halberstam, this is the key insight in Harney and Motten's text. We cannot truly imagine a future when we start from a reality that is essentially unjust, whose forms of knowledge are imposed on us and do not allow us to see beyond their limits. It is impossible to end colonialism if we fight with its tools and truths. We must place ourselves in a space abandoned by order and normality, a space that is ungovernable, marginal, existing beyond colonial reason. This is not an idyllic utopia. It exists in many places, in the improvisation of performance, in noise, in the enigma of the poetic, in an accent. The other space already lives within our desire. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, Manuel Borja Vidal, for your speech. Thank you, it's always inspiring. My name is Joan Seguí, I'm an EMYA judge, and I will try to keep on the momentum with the next panel, is collections reconnected, audiences and engagement. When we try to be disruptive or inclusive, we're talking about big words here in the museum world. We obviously have to use as many means as we can. This is an obvious thing. And collections are one of those things that museums have as a powerful mean. But perhaps too often, than we will all wish, these collections, or an important part of these collections, are hidden for the view of our visitors, of our audiences. They are in the storage area. This next panel is trying to reflect a little bit more of how can we solve that? What are we doing about that? And what can we do to reconnect or to sometimes even connect those collections with our audiences? To help me doing that work, I have a wonderful panel, and please join me welcoming to the stage Cheyenne Dubois from the Muséum du Ski in Le Bois, Switzerland. Botka Batso from the Museum of Ethnography of Budapest. Welcome. Diane Esselborn from MUMAPS, Museum of Mechanical Art and Heritage in Saint-Croix, Switzerland. Welcome. And Veronika Zwiska and Aga Widaska from the Museum of Engineering and Technology in Krakow, Poland. Welcome.
So, good morning. The whole team at Ski Museum is delighted to be here in Bilbao. I'm Cheyenne Dubois, and I'm a research associate at Ski Museum in Le Bois. Our Swiss museum is located in a hamlet that has 2 museums for 40 people. We are not in the Alps, where the ski resorts are, but in our region, cross-country skiing is practiced. Our museum, which is privately owned and run by foundations, opened in September 2023. A private collection amassed over more than 50 years by Mr. Laurent Donzé is the base of the museum. He's a passionate cross-country skier and keenly aware of developments in this sport. He began to preserve artifacts from its history. Through various encounters and live events, his collection grew to become a substantial one. As a result, the museum's collection holds over 10,000 items, including more than 3,000 pairs of ski from various disciplines. Our permanent exhibition explores the history of skiing, in particular the evolution of ski equipment and its profound impact on Swiss society. In Switzerland, skiing is deeply embedded in everyday life. There are numerous ski resorts. Children often go to ski with school, and the country produces many world-class athletes. Surprisingly, until now, there has been no museum in Switzerland dedicated exclusively to skiing. Our museum is part of this cultural landscape and aims to make this rich tradition accessible to everyone, from researchers to the general public. What makes our museum unique is that it has been designed as a fully cohesive experience. Great care was taken during the renovation to preserve the building's original character, while making it welcoming to all visitors, with spaces such as a children's area and a library that can also host conferences. This holistic approach is also reflected in the exhibition design. The items are exhibited on an open, glass-free platform, allowing for an accessible experience. This choice perfectly aligns with our commitment to durability. Thanks to this highly modular design, this setup allows us to easily rotate and refresh our exhibited collections. I will now let you explore the museum through this video.
Alors là, c'est clair qu'il y avait un important fossé à franchir entre un matériel qui est assez étrange. Certes, ça a un charme, mais ça n'a rien d'un musée officiel. Tout commence par un intérêt pour le ski, très marqué, la pratique du ski, mais peut-être une passion pour le ski. Puis ensuite, gentiment, on évolue une collection de matériel de ski. Et puis, 50 ans s'écoulent, le matériel s'accumule. Le déclic, c'est lorsque un généreux mécène achète son gamme et puis décide d'en faire un musée ou mettre en évidence sa collection. Au départ, on ne rêvait même pas de musée. C'était un lobby, une collection privée, un bon moment passé entre amis. C'était pas d'autre chose. Alors, la thématique principale, c'est évidemment l'histoire du ski, du début de nos jours. Mais comme le ski a des ramifications importantes dans la société.
On imagine le monde économique, le monde touristique. Donc il s'agit de faire des allusions aussi à replacer le ski, des aspects techniques c'est sûr, mais aussi le rôle social qu'il a joué dans ce pays.
Le point fort de ce musée, c'est probablement la collection d'objets sur laquelle il peut compter pour finalement mettre en scène l'histoire des skis, le ski alpin, le ski nordique aussi, et puis d'autres modalités de pratique, le ski de randonnée, le saut à ski. On sait que nos sociétés sont très liées à des résultats sportifs. Et le fait d'avoir ce musée, en fait, son point fort, c'est aussi de dérouler une histoire qui va au-delà des aléas sportifs, au-delà de l'incertitude du sport, qui va faire qu'un jour où le ski suisse sera peut-être moins en haut de l'affiche, on pourra continuer à raconter l'histoire, on pourra continuer à la construire entre des mythes, entre des souvenirs, pour finalement continuer cette espèce de mémoire collective du ski en Suisse.
La majorité des visiteurs ont eu un contact un jour ou l'autre avec le ski, soit de leur enfance, soit plus tard. Donc, quelque part, c'est toujours très émotionnel de retrouver des choses qu'on a vécues, peut-être même qu'on avait oubliées. Donc, il y a à la fois une connaissance, ils apprennent des choses sur le ski, mais aussi une partie de leur histoire qui ressurgit en parcourant ces expositions.
Good morning. I will tell you a story about the transformation, but first let me introduce myself. My name is Borka Bazsó. I'm working in the Museum of Ethnography in Budapest as the International Relations Coordinator. So I'm basically the spokesperson of the museum in most of the conferences, which is very interesting because my colleagues worked on it and I'm speaking about it. So first, I would like to give a great applause to my colleagues because they are the ones who worked on it. So please applaud them. And I'm very happy that this panel is after the panel about play, because I also prepared a play, a little game to you. I was wondering if you can, by seeing this picture, you can figure it out how old is our museum. So think on a number. Think on any number. And I will reveal the numbers soon, but just think on it, okay? So the Museum of Ethnography did not simply move into a new building. We reimagined what an ethnographic museum can mean in Europe today. So this is already a clue first. And now, our museum is 154 years old. How many of you got it right, or closely right? Raise your hands. Oh, okay, some of you, very nice. My colleagues did not get it right, so they did not raise their hands. Anyway, in recent years, we opened a new museum building, a new collection center, a new permanent exhibition, and renewed our digital infrastructure. But this was not primarily an infrastructure project. It was an institutional transformation. This transformation can be summarized in a simple sentence: from collection to connection. For a long time, ethnographic museums were primarily places where collections were preserved, studied, and displayed. Today, we believe collections have another purpose. They can connect people. They can connect generations, communities, cultures, and perspective. The idea shaped our new permanent exhibition and increasingly shapes the way how we work today. We are actually preparing a permanent exhibition conference, so if you're interested in it, let me know, because I can tell you more topic about it, because we are very deeply into the permanent exhibition as topic. So we do not display the objects. Through objects, we reveal people, communities, and stories. Our permanent collection exhibition presents more than 3,600 objects, but it is not organized as a single linear narrative. Instead, it offers a network of stories. A shamanic memorial figure collected more than a century ago can now be connected to the story of the shaman's living descendants. A bridal chest becomes a story about memory, family, continuity across generations. And a skateboard shoe reminds us that ethnography is also about the present. Through our contemporary research group, so-called MADOC, we work with contemporary communities, bringing their experiences into the collection and creating new dialogues around contemporary culture and everyday life. Visitors are not expected to follow one interpretation. They are invited to create for their own. For us, the collection is not a destination, it is a starting point for dialogue. But dialogue also requires self-reflection. This is why our exhibition is not only about the cultures represented in the collection, it is also about the museum itself. Visitors encounter questions about how collections were created, how interpretations have changed over time, and what remains absent. In one section, empty display cases tell a story about objects that were lost, destroyed, or never collected at all. These absences are part of the story. We believe that museums must have the courage to make uncertainty, complexity, and difficult histories visible. Connection also means sharing authority. The creation of our permanent exhibition involved 42 curators, nearly 100 museum staff members, and more than 600 external contributors. Source communities, artists, musicians, researchers, students, and tradition bearers all participated in shaping museum knowledge. And yes, we have office dogs, quite a few of them. He's Noodly, and he's a great help of our colleagues. We have actually a lot of office dogs. And because museum knowledge should not speak with a single institutional voice, it should be polyphonic. And that's our museum choir, so we are quite polyphonic, as you can see. This approach extends beyond exhibitions. We create entry points for many different audiences: families with babies, teenagers, university students, local communities, visitors from disadvantaged regions, and groups who have traditionally been underrepresented in cultural institutions. At the same time, the museum experience no longer ends inside the gallery. Through digitization, online collections, creative digital platforms, and social media, we continue building relationships beyond our physical walls. We not just moved into a new museum building, but we also migrated all of our data into a new digital platform. And finally, we see the museum not as a repository of the past, but as a participant in the conversation of the present. Our project addressed questions of identity, cultural diversity, social inclusion, memory, sustainability, and collective experience, because collections are not only about where we come from. They can also help us understand where we are going right now. The transformation of the Museum of Ethnography can therefore be described in a simple sequence. Collection becomes story. Stories create dialogue. Dialogue builds community, and community creates social impact. This is what we mean by from collection to connection. And let me show you that also on a video. Thank you for your attention.
So, dear colleagues from European Museum, thank you for the inspiring discussion and speech that we already have. It is for me a great pleasure that I'm here to introduce you to the Museum of Art, Mechanics and Heritage of Sainte-Croix. And to begin, I would like to show you our presentation video. It's coming.
Avant d'être silencieuses, ces machines ont fait vibrer toute une région et plusieurs générations. Des objets capables de faire naître une émotion sans électricité, seulement grâce au génie humain. Ces machines ont façonné l'image de Sainte-Croix. Elles ont construit sa réputation et son identité industrielle. Chaque machine raconte une époque, un savoir-faire, une manière d'innover. Ce patrimoine a été transmis de génération en génération et il fallait le préserver, l'expliquer, le transmettre. Le MUMAPS rassemble près de 15 000 objets, 15 000 témoins du patrimoine de la région et de son ingéniosité mécanique. Pour les plus jeunes, ces objets peuvent sembler lointains, des reliques difficiles à imaginer utilisables. Pour d'autres, ce sont des objets d'antan, des machines familières, capables de réveiller des souvenirs. Ici, le musée ne se contente pas de conserver, il relie les générations. La visite permet de comprendre comment ces objets fonctionnaient, à quoi ils servaient et pourquoi ils ont marqué leur époque. Ces machines ne parlent pas du passé, elles parlent à ceux qui les regardent aujourd'hui. MUMAPS, le musée où les machines ont une âme.
Launched in June 2024.
Avant d'être silencieuse, ces
Thank you. Sorry. So launched in June 2024, the MUMAPs emerged from the unique integration of three iconic cultural entities of the Sainte Croix region in Switzerland. These institutions were the International Arts Mechanics Center, opened in 1985, the Beaux Museum, opened in 1955, and the Arts and Science Museum, opened in 1872. The MUMAPs is dedicated to preserving and promoting the cultural, historical, artistic, and technical heritage of Sainte Croix, and more broadly, the heritage of art mechanics. The museum is managed by a non-profit foundation and has 16 employees, including 13 guides. It preserves, presents, and shares more than 15,000 objects through 3 exhibitions, 2 permanents, and a room for temporary exhibitions. The MUMAPs is located in an historic building built in 1900 by the Paillard Company and was until the 70s the heart of the Hermès Precisa International Typewriters Factory. Since opening, the MUMAPs has welcomed around 12,000 visitors each year. To provide some historical context, Sainte Croix is located at an altitude of 1,000 meters in the Jura Mountains and today has just over 5,000 inhabitants. Originally an agricultural region, Sainte Croix became an important center of craftsmanship and industry at the end of the 18th century, following the development of watchmaking across all the Jura region. Over time, Sainte Croix became famous worldwide for the production of music boxes, and at the beginning of the 20th century, it also gained an international reputation for manufacturing gramophones, radios, Torrance record players, Hermès typewriters, and Bolex cameras. Today, Sainte Croix and the MUMAPs help preserve and pass on the craftsmanship of arts mechanics, which is included on the UNESCO's representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. To showcase this unique and rich heritage, the MUMAPs offers 2 permanent tours. Once Upon a Time in Sainte Croix is an historical exhibition that displays around 80% of the collection through a visitable storage scenography. The tour is self-guided and chronological. The scenography choice confronts visitors with the accumulative complex of the museum's collection while revealing their richness and potential. Art Mechanics, the Dream Factory, is a thematical exhibition and an immersive experience in which the guide sets in motion objects from the collection. Only available with a guided tour, it revealed the essence of our objects, allowing the visitors to appreciate the richness of their sound and the deep emotion of their movement and gesture with a human transmission. Putting these objects in motion requires a close monitoring of them. The active and intrinsic participation of the artisans with MUMAPs makes this choice of direct transmission possible. Through the emotions and stories carried by its mechanical objects, the MUMAPs is a cross-generational and cross-cultural space, as well as a place for social cohesion and collective memory. The MUMAPs is also committed to the future of Sainte Croix as a player of the more global reflection on the future of tourism in mid-mountain towns and villages. Due to global warming, it requires the development of a full-season tourism with emphasis on nature, proximity, sports, and culture. Through partnership with schools, events, scientific institutions, and the Make Art Association, the MUMAPs help attract new amateur and professional audiences to the field of precision mechanics. By doing so, it perpetuates knowledge in and of the Nord Vaudois region and attracts new professionals and sometimes clients to the locality. Our heritage takes visitors to a world where gears become music, billows become birdsong, and camps reproduce the precision of a human movement. The MUMAPs is a place where mechanical creativity comes to life, and we hope to carry the melodies of our music boxes even further. Merci pour votre attention, et nous espérons vous recevoir bientôt à Sainte Croix. Thank you for your attention, and we hope to welcome you soon in Sainte Croix.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so proud to be here, and it's a great honor and pleasure for me to invite you to Krakow, to our museum, firstly by a short video.
Mój napęd, energia. W Muzeum Inżynierii i Techniki w Krakowie działa jak dobrze zaprojektowana maszyna. Ten mechanizm napędzają 3 ogniwa, które razem tworzą spójny układ. Zabytkowa zajezdnia tramwajowa na Kazimierzu spina narrację i dziedzictwo miejsca. Interaktywny ogród doświadczeń uruchamia naukę w działaniu. Oraz polotniczy hangar Czyżyny, który poszerza perspektywę i umożliwia ekspozycję obiektów w większej skali. Siedziba główna to zajezdnia. Wyjątkowa przestrzeń od zawsze związana z rozwojem miejskiej inżynierii. Zlokalizowana w sercu historycznego Kazimierza, na terenie XIX-wiecznego kwartału przemysłowego, obejmującego niegdyś także gazownię i elektrownię miejską. Dzięki temu historia techniki prezentowana jest dokładnie tam, gdzie realnie kształtowała życie Krakowa. To miejsce, które kiedyś napędzało ruch, a dziś inicjuje opowieść o wynalazkach w kontekście przeszłości, ale i przyszłości. Muzeum zostało powołane do życia w 1998 roku. Od początku mierzyło się ze zdefiniowaniem swojej tożsamości. W wyniku wieloletniego procesu analiz i interpretacji w 2022 roku dokonało redefinicji i zmiany nazwy na Muzeum Inżynierii i Techniki, która jasno określiła zakres i ambicje instytucji. Sercem tej opowieści jest imponująca kolekcja zabytków techniki, od maszyn, narzędzi i urządzeń przemysłowych, po sprzęt elektroniczny i użytkowy. Wśród unikatowych obiektów znajdują się m.in. XVII-wieczne drewniane rury wodociągowe, fonograf Edisona, pierwsze polskie telefony, historyczne odbiorniki radiowe, a także samochody, motocykle i komputery. Zbiory pokazują technikę jako siłę napędową przemian cywilizacyjnych, motor codziennego życia i wysiłek ludzkiego intelektu. Na fundamencie kolekcji powstaje bogaty program wystawienniczy i edukacyjny. Docenioną przez publiczność i środowisko muzealne, wystawę stałą Miasto Technoczułość wyróżnia nowoczesne, angażujące podejście do dziedzictwa techniki. Zajmująca ponad 3000 m2, ekspozycja zaprasza do wielowymiarowego doświadczenia złożoności miasta i jego oddziaływania na człowieka. Wystawa w tym kształcie powstała jako rezultat największej w historii tego miejsca inwestycji. Po przebudowie uzyskano dodatkowy podziemny poziom na ekspozycję i zaplecze magazynowo-techniczne. Muzeum Inżynierii i Techniki jest otwarte dla wszystkich – dzieci, młodzieży, dorosłych i seniorów, osób z różnymi potrzebami. Poprzez troskę o zbiory rozumianą jako gromadzenie, badania, konserwację muzealiów, udostępnianie i edukację, instytucja buduje przestrzeń międzypokoleniowego spotkania wokół wspólnego dziedzictwa. To muzeum, które opowiada o technice z czułością, które dziedzictwo techniczne stawia na równi z artefaktami historycznymi czy dziełami sztuki.
So now the presentation, but I must do it very shortly. So modern museum function in a changing social context, and it is clearly when we see the definition of ICOM and how it has changed. The shift from preservation and education is now towards participation, experience, and relations. So for us, it's that mean transition from museum of my childhood with very conservative approach to collection into interactive place of experiment, as our museum is. But Polish museum regulation is from 1996, and it doesn't fit within today's reality. So the statute is now in process and will be the subject of discussion on the Convent of Polish Museologists next year. But it doesn't aim to set new trends, but rather to sanction what has already happened in museums. Sorry. What is very important that Museum of Middle and Eastern Europe often function in different reality than the big and stable institution of Western Europe. A lot of energy is still used up by infrastructure, storages, safety of the collection, and human and financial resources. Our museum, MIT, it's very nice, function between more of a traditional understanding of a museum and new expectation for a cultural institution. What does it mean? That we are between protection, documentation, and preservation, but our collection is the beginning point for a discussion about the city, everyday life, experience of the citizens, and technology in memories. We have an offer for many group of visitors, also for people with special needs and inclusive ones. But on the other hand, we still have some problems with storages, for example, and our objects are very large, so that's why. Technological collection tends to be difficult for the public to understand, and visitors often just see an old machine, but not the history it talks about. That's why we build close narratives to tell the story, which is the key to understand the changing social condition in cities. We try to create not just exhibition, but also experiences surrounding them. And very important are for us discussion and visitors' memories. We observe how technology triggers memories between generations, for example, because children and adults react differently, of course, but both groups are searching for a personal points of reference. We have some limitation. We have some limitation because we have no possibility of carrying out free of charge activities, but we solve this problem to make cooperating with many social institutions, and it makes us allowed to conduct free activities for visitors. I know that the time is off, I know, shortly. So we conduct, for example, Gordonian classes for very small children up to third month of life. And we work with the resident and organization to create the activities which are the most attractive for our visitors. Here you have some examples. Modern Museum of Technology present objects within context, and our exhibition should be a space for experiment, dialogue, sharing memories, and creating social bonds, mostly. In the end, I would like to tell that we don't agree with the statement that Museum of Technology or design have it easier than art museum, for example, because our objects have always served people. Maybe it is easier to connect with an object of everyday use rather than with Baroque painting, for example, but our situation is harder because of this reason. Everyday objects don't involve respect. So we work on creating the prestige of the collection and respect towards exhibited object. Participation is very important for us, but just in a dose that doesn't threaten that the museum becoming something that no longer could be called a museum. Thank you very much for your attention, and I invite you to Krakow, of course. Here we are.
Thank you. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you to you all. I think Aga is coming up now. You're changing actors here on the stage. Thank you. Before we carry on, please don't be shy. Remember Slido. The code is here. So for those of you that haven't connected, please just make your questions through. So let's focus now on the collections. Okay, here we got a panel with 4 different type of collections, although the 2 of you are more or less, okay, but we got a very specific collection, ski, we got a museum of ethnography. I know museums of ethnography, collection of everything, no? You cannot say no in a museum of ethnography. And then we got technology and machinery. So, and we all got fantastic exhibitions, we showed that, man. But what about those large part of collections that are behind the scene? It's kind of the elephant in the room sometimes, no? What do we do with those? We care about them, we store them, we have problems of space, we have problems of conservation, but they are a fantastic, active mean to connect with people. Let's just start for the obvious. Give me an example, give us an example in each of your museums. What do you do with your collections to try to visibilize them, to use them? Cheyenne.
I think people discover the collections, and the collections ski are surround in the exhibitions. So we are on the wall, on the top, and I think it's the huge number of ski that has an impact. So people people who do ski discover a material that they have used, and it's emotional. So they have yes, they have emotional connections, and we saw this in the end of the visit. They share this with the receptionist. They talk with him or with her, yes, of course, and yes, they share the joy to see this, and they, for example, they want to donate some skis or things like this, and yes, yes. I don't know if I answer.
Yeah, Borka?
Well, we have several projects, but first, maybe I would like to say that one of the aim of our exhibition strategies is to show as many objects as we can. We have around 250,000 objects. A lot of them are in the storages, of course. Some of them is hard to exhibit. We have also a system of monthly exhibition, objects, so the object of the month. We have a contemporary object and a not contemporary object, so it's on the 2 sides of the museum building. As you could see, it's like there is 2 entrances. So once you enter on the 2 sides, you have the object. In this way, we can choose each month a new object to show. We also have a so-called deep dive into the storages. That's a program which is for the visitors, so they can come to the storages and see some of the objects. So we have Asian culture visits, or African culture visits, or different kind of other culture visits. So there is always some routes to show. And what is also interesting is that, like I said, our strategy is built in a way that we want to show our collection. So we have different kind of exhibitions, like we have right now, the ceramic exhibition, the Everyday Luxury, that also shows one part of the collection. And then there will be other exhibitions coming in a way with the aim to show the collection itself. So we are focusing on our exhibitions, on our collection, firstly in the temporary exhibitions, and then inviting other exhibitions as well.
Jan?
So for us, there's two subjects because we have two exhibitions. The first one with the visitable storage scenography shows the most of our collection. Most of our collection are in exhibition, and it's a small part that are in our storage. So people are confronted to all these objects, like 10,000 objects. So it's a lot, and sometimes it's overwhelming for the people because it's very interesting also to see the artisanal production where the objects are very heteroclite. So one didn't look like the other one. And in another floor, we have like the industrial production with the repetitive process of the same objects. And there's different for all these objects, but subtle visually. So people often didn't seem to understand why we have like 10 similar objects in our storage, and we have to explain why, and it provoked discussion, transgenerational discussion, because often, like typewriters, the grandparents have used them to work, and the children didn't know what this object is. So it's quite great to see this building around the exhibition. And for our other tour is a guided tour. Sometimes we have objects that cannot playing because they are broken, because we use them to show. So we have to explain why specifically this object won't play for the tour, because they have to be restored by specialists. So it's interesting to see that it's not always perfect in museums. Sometimes we have objects that are not more available or are broken because we choose to use them.
Thank you. Aga?
That's a difficult decision to be made in a museum like ours. So we decided to show, of course, a huge part of our items, and we shared them also during the temporary exhibition. And the events which we organize in our museum. So we try to show the items from the storage during the events we prepare. The events, we attend to the events which are created by the city or by the enthusiastic societies, for example, the tram enthusiastic or the car enthusiastic events. And we would like to create it one of our branches, a huge storage magazine open for the public.
Okay, so that's one of the questions, because obviously in our sector now, one of the big things that's going around is to open the storage areas. We all heard of big projects in Europe and other places to open the storage, but that's not always possible for every single museum, because those projects are normally very expensive. Politicians may like open a museum but no storage area. What is a storage area? I want to have a museum, no storage area. These kind of discussions go on as always possible. So that's also a challenge, to find ways for every museum to open those collections. You were talking here about temporary exhibitions. That's a strategy, obviously, temporary exhibitions, the specific visits to the collection, connecting to different generations as an excuse. That's always. What about digitalization, for instance, technology? That's another thing, no? We got now artificial intelligence, all these new tools that enable us to place our hidden objects on the reach of people. That they have always been criticized, because sometimes museums have made big effort to put those objects online, and when you go back to check the level of use of that is not the expected one. So what's your opinion, for instance, on the use of technologies to reconnect these objects? You can start, Aga.
We use it carefully because we saw several museums, even in our city, which use as a base the new technology. And they are getting old very quickly. So it's competition not to be one. But of course, to show the context of the items, it is very helpful to do it by the new technology, by the films, by the games. And of course, we have the problem, I don't know if you have the same problem. We have problem with keeping our audience enjoy by looking. Because those are the items everybody knows, so it is the instinct to touch them. So we have the problem like this exactly.
Then?
Yeah, for us, the digitalization of the collection are very important. Obviously, for other professionals to use our heritage too, because people that visit museum are not going on this online collection on a base to work, but our yes, and to use our heritage in other places, it's very interesting. But for the other people, a lot of our objects, if they are not playing, are not talking to people. Like music boxes, if they're not playing, they're just boxes. So it's very important to use digitalization to give film when the people cannot do the guided tour, to at least see or listen the music box. It's better with a human transmission because you see the use of the tools to play the music boxes. But yes, it's a great use for us to make more sense in the use of our objects and the essence of our objects.
We are all speaking about objects, but I would like to include our archives as well. We have a huge archive, millions of pieces of archive. It is a little bit easier to digitalize the archive materials than the objects, so that's why I would like to include this one also to the topic. We have a very, very interesting archive. I would like you to all check it out on our website because they are available also online. We have, for example, an online access for the collection. We are, like I mentioned, we are like things like Bartok's first recordings are available, or Kodai's. So they are quite good things in our archives. We are also digitalizing them, Bartok's recording right now. So it's a big, big thing. But like I mentioned, we are also migrating, we finished our migration into a new digital system, so called Museum Plus. And there we have all the collection. It is also accessible on our website for researchers. If people want to research our objects or our archive materials, they can come into the museum anytime. They can ask for it. They only have to fill out like a research paper, so what they are researching. So we make these things available also first online and then also in real life. Another thing I would like you also include in this is the communication. So on the communication channels, we have TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We are present in a lot of ways. There we are also using our collection. So we are not just posting events, we are also using the collection, the information behind the objects, behind the materials, behind the archive materials. Sometimes we use songs. We have actually, I think, a soundtrack with song recordings. We have several websites with sound recordings, like I mentioned, from Bartok. So we are using the online space very much for us. We are moved out. We have also application, the Ethnofusion, where you can create your own music. Or we have the motif creator, where you can use the motifs from our objects to create a new kind of motif. So there is a lot to do. And one more thing, we also teaching AI, which is a little bit hard. AI is not so simple to teach, but we have a project with the university together, the MoMA, the Design University, and we are teaching AI so that AI can create better pictures of the Hungarian folk culture. So when you're asking for a matyú dress, which is a typical Hungarian dress, then it should show a matyú dress and not just some weird dress. So we are also working with AI.
Okay, thank you. Cheyenne?
In our case, it was important to do a database that we have online access. So we invented every skills, and yes, we work too with regional museums. So we have a database in the region, so we can see the other collection and so on. It's very interesting. So yes.
Okay, there is a very quite popular slide or question, and it's not an easy one. So, but we are just before lunch, so we're going to be the last one. Put all the energy we got left on it. I quite agree with you. It says how to think about the concept of collecting in a more sustainable way. Then maybe not acquire everything. What's your opinion about this quite central question? Should we think more when we get more things into our collection? Should we be collecting everything? This is a big topic, I know, but just let's put something on the table. Cheyenne, you can start.
So, like I told before, we have a lot of donations, but we make choices because we can take everything. So skills are big, so it takes place, so it's not possible. So we chose this, and we can take every ski in the world, so we chose by mark or model or so. So yes, we need to choose on, yeah.
Yeah, I agree that the storage space is a great limitation to stop to collect at some point. Right now we have a lot of storages because we just moved into a new storage building some years ago. So we don't have that limitation right now, but we have the limitation of ourselves. So we created a strategy. We said, like, we have a strong strategy of collecting. We have a quarter-yearly meeting, a very, very strict committee. So you have to really defend your object if you want to include it to the museum. It's like a reality show a little bit for me, I have to say, but don't listen too much. My colleagues, it's like you're sitting in it and then people are telling why they want to invite and include this object, and then other people are opposing. So it's a little bit like a jury topic. It's very interesting. And we clearly choose objects which should be included and not. And the other thing I want to mention here is sort of the decluttering as well. So there are also certain ways we do revisions, and there are, of course, right now we moved into a new building, so we had a lot to revise and check. And there were certain objects which were which we did not include anymore to the collection, which we sort of deleted. That's also very important to see and to revise and to check whether these objects are still needed to be in the collection or not. So I'm not just saying about new collecting, but I'm also telling right now about just checking your own collection, whether everything is valuable in a way that you have to include. And for example, just very briefly, I can talk a lot, as you see. So, for example, these objects, we have a biggest collection is textile, and there were certain textiles which we sort of decluttered because of the status, or because we had a lot of them, or certain other topics. But we did not throw them away simple. We created a project around it, the so-called FAIRS project. We invited designers to create an object from the materials of the museum, and they created very nice design objects, which we are selling right now in the museum shop. So you can buy these materials in a reformed way. In this way, it is more sustainable, and we are not just collecting a bunch of objects and then not doing with it anything, but we are also seeing what we can do with it when we don't need it anymore, and what we can do later, not just leave it in the storages.
Interesting. Diane?
Yes, that's a big question, in fact. The strategy is very important. That's one of our first work with the opening of the museum was to select the thematic that we want to develop and the collection that we want to develop. And we have, because of the merger of the three institutions, to close some collection because we have an ethnographic collection too, and it has no meaning for the new museum. So we keep this object, but we close this collection. And we have also a reflection because we don't have big space to keep this collection. That's why we have a visitable storage scenography, because we have to find solutions to keep all the 15,000 objects in one building. So it was challenging, and we choose to expose them. But now we have to really reflect when we have donation or acquisition to say yes or no. And what's sometimes complicated is to explain to the people that want to donate their objects that are very important for them that we don't want them. And we have to explain why, and for the conservation, for the exhibition, because we have already an object, similar objects, and often we give them options with other museums that they can donate their objects, and the problem is for the other and not from us anymore. But yes, it's complicated to explain to people why today museums are not accepting all the objects for the collection, because before it was like this, and now not anymore, because we have to, yes, valorize our collection that we already have.
Thank you. Okay.
I am a daughter of British Spectrum Standard, so greetings to my United Kingdom colleagues. And I am also one of the mother of the Polish version of the standard. For me, taking items to the collection means taking responsibility of them. So if we cannot explore the items, show the items, keep them carefully and safety, we cannot take it to our collection. The first document I create with my colleagues when I came to the museum, it was the politics of the construction, the collection. It is the framework. And now we can say to our donators, we are very deeply sorry, but it is not in our politic, so we cannot take responsibility of those items.
Okay, we probably will carry on a long time talking about this very central topic, but I think we are quite behind the schedule. It's lunchtime. This is a sacred thing. Lunchtime is lifetime. Thank you very much for your patience, and we'll see you after lunch. Thank you.